Welcome to another episode of the Peak Performance Selling Podcast, where we interview top sellers and sales leaders to learn the different tips, tricks, and mental strategies that they use to create sustainable peak performance. Let's get rolling. Welcome to today's episode of the Peak Performance Selling Podcast. Today we get to welcome on Scott Milener, who's the CEO and co-founder of IntroSnap, which is a really cool tool that he'll tell us a little bit more about to help organizations give back, to get better meetings booked, to drive more success as a whole with their investments in driving more sales engagement and prospect meetings. Beyond that, Scott has an incredible background leading sales organizations as an individual contributor, as a VP of sales multiple times, and has really worked across the spectrum of small scale startups, early stage, taking on different funding from companies like SoftBank and other organizations, to working at places like Oracle, being one of the top sellers there, actually number one for the Oracle Marketing Cloud out of about 350 different reps, and then running enterprise sales across many different organizations, helping triple revenue, all sorts of different things that he has done as a seller, as a sales leader. And Scott brings a wealth of knowledge to the table for us that I'm super excited for as we get to start to learn more about how you can move into sales leadership, and even all the way to co-founding it and starting and running your own business. So, Scott, welcome to the show.
Great. Thanks, Jordan.
I am really excited to learn from you, as not only is the new project that you're working on really, really interesting with IntroSnap, and we'll learn more about that as we get into it, but seeing the experience you have as a seller, as a sales leader, I'm really excited to learn more about that journey and how you think about the mental game and ultimately sustaining performance through your career. The first place we always have to start, though, is understanding, how'd you end up in sales? What got you here in the first place? And talk to us a little bit about your career journey to where you're at today.
Yeah, sure. I joined a startup right out of college. Went to school in New York. A friend of mine had already just gotten this company started off, and I came out to Cupertino, California. Had always wanted to come to the Silicon Valley, and we were selling a product that was a combination of a Mac and a PC in a single box. He had invented this thing where you could basically toggle between either OS and run any app you wanted. It was pretty amazing, actually. And so right off the bat, we had to sell it. So he had built it, and the job one was let's go sell it. So it started right off there, and then I went on to run BD for two other firms, including a social media marketing firm, and where I learned a lot about social and modern digital, and then onto Oracle Marketing Cloud, as you mentioned, for a few years, and then a couple more companies, and here I am. So it's been a natural trajectory for me. I think. I asked myself what it is about that. I think I just love people, love working with people. And it's fun to talk about a cool new product and how it can change their lives. And then when they engage and you realize, okay, they also agree that it's going to change their lives and improve their business. And it's just very satisfying. And I like storytelling, which is an important part of sales, good sales. And so just sort of a natural fit for me.
That's really great. I think it's a really hard thing for folks as they go through the traditional college path to see themselves in sales. I've talked to a lot of folks within academia now that are actually bringing sales into the college curriculum, which is really exciting, but wasn't there for me. I'm guessing wasn't there for you. And so did you know you wanted to be in sales initially, or was that just how the opportunity presented itself?
Yeah, not really. Yeah, in college, at least, when I went to college, they didn't have sales courses. Or it is funny because they don't teach you how to present an idea, how to run a sales cycle, how to talk to customers, how to price out of negotiate. It's all like economic theory and, art history, which it's nice, but so I didn't really understand enterprise selling or any of that. I just had to dive in and just learn by doing.
Yeah, it's a really interesting space, especially as you've grown in your career now to leading. I think one of the things that intrigued me about sales early on was, well, any business has to drive revenue in order to be successful. And so it seemed like a really good path to understanding, how do you communicate value to others? How do you connect with people? How do you provide feedback to your product or to your account management team about how can the organization run and grow more effectively? And as you've transitioned into VP of sales roles and now actually sitting in the CEO seat at IntroSnap, talk to me a little bit about some of the skills or mental models you've had to update with yourself, moving from that individual contributor role to leadership and then ultimately to the CEO seat.
Yeah, I think for me, I think about some core traits or core day-to-day kind of actions and how you see yourself. I think the number one thing is really simple, but really important. You've got to stay positive. No matter what happens, you got to stay positive because you have a purpose, you have a mission, you have a great product. I mean, if it's not a great product, you probably shouldn't be trying to sell it. So you assume you have a good product. You got to remain excited to tell others about it, remain excited to have your team tell others about it, continue to work on it. Because then that enthusiasm is contagious, and it's contagious to the team. It's contagious to yourself. It's contagious to the customer, to the market, to social media, all that stuff. So staying positive, enthusiastic is really important. There's a saying that's, sales depends on the attitude of the salesperson, not really the attitude of the customer, right? Yeah, you need to win them over, but the how you approach every day and approach each customer with that right sort of enthusiasm that's contagious is super important.
That is so powerful. And I find, especially from the startup world, when maybe you're in the earlier stages of the product and the vision of where you want to go, but maybe it's not the best version where you're still in beta, you're still in V1 or V2. How do you maintain that in the startup world? How do you keep that enthusiasm and that positivity when you know that your product is on the right path, but not quite there yet?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that's a good question because that's sort of this elusive product market fit that a startup like ours, and really, I mean, companies for years and years, especially in complicated areas like martech and analytics and big data and these other very complicated to really get that ball rolling where things start to come a little bit easier and everyone understands the product and really they already start to look for that product. And we're certainly in that phase now. I mean, we've got customers and happy customers, but we have a long way to go before I would say that we're there. But it's going really well. So in the meantime, I think one of the biggest things that keeps everybody moving in the right direction is customers. So even if it's early, go get customers. It's very energizing when everyone says, wow, so-and-so company is just agreed to use our product. It's very energizing. Because then they realize we're not just making a product. We're not just talking about it. Other people are putting up money to use it to achieve what we've said we believe they can do with it. So get customers, get them on board, and then respond to customer change. So customers will give you feedback. Hey, we wish it did this, or how do we do that? Or can we integrate it with this? And so we work tightly to improve the product and our processes based on customer feedback, which is also energizing because it's real. We're not just sitting around thinking, oh, we should do something. It's actually a customer said it, or more than one customer has said it. So that I think is the couple of the most energizing things is get customers, and respond to customers. Everyone's down for that.
Yeah, that ability to grow, to learn from the feedback, to move out of the theoretical sketches on a whiteboard or mock-ups or wireframes of what that product will look like, to actually say, hey, we've got customer 1, 5, 10, and knowing that you're not going to be at your best version of your product, I hesitate to say, but maybe ever, as our products are continually evolving. We're continually iterating and redesigning and redeveloping to make them faster, more efficient, more user-friendly. And so I think that's a really good point of, you're never going to be able to get user feedback if you're not bringing on any users.
Correct. Yeah. So that's critical. So that's what, I think it's, and so having a team that understands that early on. So, I think there are sort of two different types of founders or business leaders. There's sort of the operational business leader. Maybe if there's three types, it's probably a simplification, but there's the operational, very good at sort of the COO kind of things, the capital raise and the disbursement and the hiring and the structure, and and that's important. But it's not a sales function. And then there's this sort of engineering founder, which is great at the engineering, understands it inside and out, but there also isn't a sales function really built in there. And then there's sort of the sales, leaders or sales founder, sales CEO, or there's the company comes in from a sales side, where right off the bat, it's, we know how to go get customers. That's what we're going to focus on. Of course, we need to build a great product. And so I think each of those types of leaders are important. I would put myself more in the sales camp. It's just natural for me to say, okay, we're ready. We got to go get customers on this thing. And it keeps us energized and moving in the right direction.
I think that's a really fantastic point, as I've been part of early organizations that have maybe had one of those three leaders as part of the founding team, and seen the challenges that can come from that, from having a limited perspective. And so I see that you are a co-founder in IntroSnap. And so what did you think about trying to create with that leadership team as you were ready to go out and really start building your own business and your own product? Talk to us a little bit about how you thought about finding those types of leaders, or was it mainly just you saying, all right, I know I'm a sales founder, but I can flex into the engineer or COO roles also? How do you think about that?
Yeah. I think the two things that were important were to have a team that understood the problem set and understood the customer pain points. So I didn't want to bring in people who just out of left field, just because they were good, maybe even at what they do. But it's so much easier when you have a discussion when everyone totally understands the pain points that you're trying to solve. And generally, if you're going to sell some SaaS, you better be solving some clear pain points, or you're going to have a tough time, right? So it's hard. It's hard anyway, even if you are solving pain points. So that was the key thing. So my co-founder and head of growth is Xander Groby. He also came out of SaaS sales, Oracle, Trip Actions, Lattice, Engines, and understands the pain points in spades of the sales cycle and the outbound and the prospect engagement and sending something personal. Like, this was something that he and I both understood. And then from an engineering standpoint, we've got great people who also have internalized and understand the problem set and are 100% behind it. So those are, I think, really important, because then you come to the market with a knowledge base, and you don't have to figure out all those things. It's again, that's why we started it. So that's really how I looked at it to start with.
Really cool. And you talk a little bit earlier about maintaining this level of positivity, this enthusiasm. One of the questions that I love to ask folks is, even though you're number one in sales at a massive company like Oracle, competing against lots of different people, I'm pretty sure there have been times in your career where you've maybe had a bad quarter, bad month, bad year even.
No. No.
I'm just going to guess it's happened once at least. How do you bounce back from those times? How do you get back to that level of enthusiasm or positivity? And what's the unique mix that maybe you have found that's worked really well for you over your years in sales, or leading others to really help them bounce back if they're struggling?
So, yeah, I think this is important. For number one, you got to figure out what went wrong. So if you have a bad quarter, let's say, usually that means you didn't close as many deals or the amount of deals as everyone had hoped. So you got to analyze, well, what went wrong? Why not? And then you got to learn and adjust. You have to be ready to learn and adjust. In fact, you have to expect change. There was this founder who invested in a different company years ago, who invested in one of my companies. And he said, he was in a fast moving business that he ended up selling in analytics. And he said, every Friday they had a change meeting with the whole company as they were growing. And it was just to talk about what they saw in the market and what was different literally that week that they should think about in their marketing and their sales and their pricing and their product. Because he wanted to, and try to internalize that. You got to expect change and improvement, not just be reactionary to it, right? And so very, very important. So, well, what are we going to change? What went wrong? And then in a sales effort, it's typically, if you have a good product that does sell, if you have a bad quarter, let's say you have a sales cycle of less than 90 days, that probably means something happened 2 or 3 quarters, or even 1 or 2 quarters prior, where you weren't filling the funnel, you weren't engaging enough with those prospects that were in the funnel. Either balls were dropped, or we didn't, we just weren't doing the work, the tenacious work, to make sure that the funnel stayed filled. Because that's usually, if you've got something that's, again, has some win rate, you got to look back and say, what did we do to not keep a healthy pipe or take care of the people that were in the pipe? It's kind of comes down to that, like the top and the middle of the funnel is kind of where the action is, because if you have a decent product and a decent process, you're going to get a decent win rate out the bottom. So what did you do in the middle of the funnel? And that's actually one of the reasons for IntroSnap, because that's where the massive pain point is. You had an inbound, but you lost them, or we had a good outbound, but we lost them, or we were in process, but they went cold. Use something like an IntroSnap where you can send them a charitable donation because you learned about them earlier, and touch and get them warm again. And that's exactly what the whole point is, right? Is to do that. So that's really probably where the analysis has to be. What did we not do in the funnel in a quarter or 2 ago? Because that's probably why we are where we are now.
Totally. And I think there's so much good sentiment as you think about looking back and realizing that, well, it probably wasn't what you did last week or maybe even last month, but how do we take that step back or that bigger view to look maybe a quarter or 2 back? And you mentioned IntroSnap, and I think it's a really exciting company and product and what you're working on, because I find it's really easy to burn out in sales, to only have my mission be focused on the dollars that I'm closing, because that means it's the dollars that I'm putting into my pocket. As somebody who, my dad was in the nonprofit world, running a nonprofit for 30 plus years, I sometimes feel a little guilty about not giving back more outside of dollars or some consulting or sitting on a board. And so talk to us a little bit about IntroSnap, because I think it actually brings this value to feel like not only can we ideally have more meetings, more effective, more quality meetings, but bringing in this concept of being able to give back. Can you just talk to us a little bit about IntroSnap and where that came from and what the intention of this company is? Because I'm super excited by it.
Yeah, sure. No, but you touched on it. That's exactly it. So the the need today is to reach out in a personal, more meaningful way, where you're offering something outside of a pitch, outside of a poke, right? Or features, feature. Don't you want my features? And the problem is that there's just way too much of that going on. There's just too many empty emails and in-mails and stuff going out that, hey, please listen to me while I lather on about how we're, how we can do whatever we do without first doing something meaningful. And so what IntroSnap is enabling is a touch point or multiple touch points where you can provide something personal and meaningful to the prospect, and that is in the form of a charitable donation to a cause that they care about. And there are millions and millions of causes. In fact, IntroSnap is integrated with over 1 million causes. It's basically all North American charities. And so you can, instead of just saying, hey, let's talk about my features, it's like, hey, let's talk about where you live. Oh, you have kids, your kid goes to what school? Oh, that's great. I just searched and on IntroSnap and, there's a fund for that school. Yeah, well, yeah, it's called the such and such fund. Yeah, great. So next touch, Jordan, I'm going to put up as a thank you and to give back $100 to the local school that we talked about where your son goes. Imagine the value. It's like, okay, you've got me, right? You just, as opposed to, okay, a nice chat we had. I forgot to tell you that on page 5, you can send an email automatically with a trigger. Think about the difference between those two touches, right? And so, where you'll be able to give back while doing business. And the thing is that the value of these interactions is so high, right? I think we talked about there's $2,000 for a meeting, $4,000 typically marketing spend for an opportunity. The spend is there. In fact, it's way too much. So we're trying to enable less spend, much better touches, and have it be meaningful to the prospect. And they love it. They really respond very, very well. And then the next meeting starts off on this warm footing. Hey, thanks so much for putting $100 to my kid's school. That's awesome, right? And then you start off on that footing as opposed to, okay, what are you going to pitch me, right? Big difference. And so that's really what we're doing.
That's great. And I think I saw somewhere that you guys have a pretty lofty goal of how much you're trying to give back over the next few years. Mm-hmm. What's that goal that you guys are shooting for?
Yeah. So with IntroSnap, we want to donate $1 million to charity just as a matter of course of business, over the next 2 years. That's our goal. And so the one cool thing is that the salesperson or the marketer can offer this to prospects, and prospects can also just accept it, or even they can also say to a salesperson, yeah, I'm on IntroSnap, go ahead and put it through IntroSnap and we'll book your meeting. Sure, no problem. Right, so everyone gets to benefit from helping to reach that goal, just as a matter of just as a matter of course of doing the meetings that they're likely to already be doing.
This is great. I'm such a big fan of finding ways to contribute as the ethos of the business, as that core. I think when we were talking a little bit beforehand, you mentioned, how do you weave things in? And I really like that word because I like to think about integration and really weaving that into the core of your business and how you operate and the value you provide now starts to help expand on the mission. Because I think in sales, it's really easy to just get stuck in the quota, dollars. Are we hitting the metrics for the board? So I think that's a really cool mission, and we'll definitely link to IntroSnap and share that with some folks to check out, because most of our sellers, I think, are having meetings with different people, but a lot of times they're not showing up. A lot of times they are not highly engaged, and they're just expecting the sales pitch. And if you can really lead with that empathic or compassionate start, That's a really, really beautiful starting point.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's right. And one of the problems that you touched on is salespeople are too also in a huge hurry. They're under constant pressure, despite modern thinking about how to manage sales teams, which is the servant leader and all that, which is very important. Help the team, don't just press the team. Nonetheless, the reality is, half the time, what comes down from the top is, what's your number? What's your number? How are you doing in the quarter? What about the forecast? How's this deal? I mean, that ends up what's happening, because there's just an insatiable appetite for more revenue. And so the sales team feels that every day. And yes, they want to put money in their own pockets, but they're constantly being pressed. And so that makes them in a hurry. And IntroSnap and things like it are good for building relationship and getting that cycle really to be rich. And so it's easy to do and it's quick to do, but part of it is salespeople have to pull themselves a little bit out of buy my stuff. I have to hit a number and be a little more patient, slow down a little bit mentally. And I think this allows them to do something that's different than just poke. And you probably increase your sales using something like that, and try to get away from that pressure, which I think is part of the problem of empty pitching all the time, because they're just in such a kind of a forced hurry instead of a natural sort of process that feels better for both parties.
Yeah, there's so much opportunity, as I think sales is really becoming redefined as a profession, as an operating function in a business, as we move through the last 10, 20 years, really. And you talk about this point around sales leadership, and it's so easy to fall into the talk to me about the deal, talk to me, push. What have you done as a sales leader to try and help your direct reports and your teams maybe slow down a little bit, or find that space for themselves to show up with more quality work versus just more work?
Yeah, or just, yeah. So it has to do with literally, sometimes I'll say, slow down mentally, because I know what's going on. I've been there, right? So it's like, I got to just hurry. And so I don't want people operating and if they're under tension. People don't operate well if they're tense. For short bursts, they will. We got to crank this out. It's Thursday. We got to get it done by end of day Friday, whatever that is. Yeah, people will crank tense fear for a few days and just bust something out. That's different. But like day in and day out, month after month, tension is not healthy. Mentally healthy, or even from a work standpoint, people don't operate well when they're tense. And you can prove that that's true. Like, managers will think, I want them grinding, but that's, we're not robots, we're people. And so, if you think about when you're great at something, it could be a sport or anything you're good at, singing or writing. When you're in the flow, when you're in that zone, are you tense? It's the opposite. When you're really great at something and you're doing it well, you're loose and it's relaxed, because you're just firing on all cylinders kind of in an automatic way. And like, you can't be great at singing or a sport or whatever it is if you're tense. It won't happen. Same thing in sales. You've got to have a relaxation, so you're thinking about the customer, thinking about what I could do better next. How could I build a more relationship by doing things like chatting with just chat. Don't even bring up business at all. Try to get to know them a little bit, maybe on LinkedIn, or follow them. Oh, follow them. What's the result of that going to be? I got to hit a number. That's the problem. So slow down mentally, relax, take the time to do the right prospecting, to do the right research, to follow through with them on social, to send them an offer for a donation, and let that just be all you do with them in the next couple of days, whatever that is. That's critical. And I've had salespeople tell me, slowing down was a really, really important thing, and I didn't realize. So I think that's a big one. And then the other is have a process that works, because the salespeople don't necessarily know what the best process is to sell your product. So if you can get them into a process that's consistent, it'll also help people relax and get into a flow that works. But I think those are both really important.
Yeah, I love having that foundation of a process to fall back onto when times get tough, or when you know the process and you know that it works. It makes it so much easier to focus on that connection versus, oh, did I ask the exactly right closing tactic question here, or qualify for budget exactly how I'm supposed to? When you have those things and those foundational skills understood and mastered, it makes it so much easier to then really get into that humanity of sales, to get into the, well, what does this prospect actually care about? How do I actually understand their goals or their challenges, and then work to really bring the right solution to the table for them? And this thought of moving away from tension. Yeah, you think, maybe since you're in Marin County up there, Steph Curry is probably not tense when he's going in to shoot a 3-pointer. He is smooth, silky smooth. And that's because he's put in the work in advance, and he can then trust the process. I love those thoughts.
Yep, exactly.
Talk to me a little bit about the personal routines that you maybe have to help you show up at your best day in and day out. What do you do to take care of yourself and really help support your own mental health or physical well-being to show up as a leader, as a seller throughout your career?
So yeah, one thing I do is I make sure to build in exercise, sports, outings, hikes, whatever it is. Try to do something every day. We're crazy busy, but it's too easy to say, "Oh, I got more to do." Of course, you have more to do, but it's 5:30. You've worked hard. Go for a run. Go for a bike ride. Go for a hike. Go hang out with the family. Go to the backyard. Whatever it might be, but try to get especially some exercise. A good run or a good bike ride does a world of good for you mentally and physically. And it also helps you purge a little bit mentally. So part of that is, another one is get up from the laptop and stop reacting to emails, reacting to in-mails. Like, it's so easy to think that email just came in, it's too important. Is it, you have to create new thought. You have to purge existing thoughts in the sense of, like process thoughts. So get up from the laptop and let your mind think, because otherwise it's all consumption and reactionary, which is not really a great way to build a business, to react constantly. You got to be creating new thought. And when you exercise, it could be mild exercise. It could be a walk, or it could be a hard bike ride. But I find that my brain then says, okay, now I've got time. I'm going to start really cranking on these ideas or these problems because you've got me away from staring at the laptop, and my heart's pumping. So you kind of get a double, you get a good, almost like a Zen-like time while you get the exercise, and it helps you process challenges and whatever else is going on in the business.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of physical health is the first major step to mental health and well-being. And exercise has so many benefits that we've known for a long time, but now you're seeing more and more from science on the neurochemical actions that happen when you exercise and you actually take a step away. We've all heard forever that people's best ideas somehow show up in the shower, which is so contrary to what we all feel programmed to do around push, grind harder, sit at the laptop. And that, I love your thought on, if we're sitting at the laptop, we're just consuming constantly and we're not creating, we're not thinking as much when we're just in the work, especially in today's day and age with all sorts of notifications and things that come in every second of every day as a whole. I'm curious about a couple rapid fire questions from you that I always love to ask people. And I think really are some keys to performing really well. The first one that I'd love to start with is, do you love winning or hate losing more?
I hate losing and I love winning. So I think the winning, I would say I love winning more than I hate losing. It just because there's the positive feelings are much better than the negative feelings. Back to the staying positive. Also, you winning propels you in a way. Losing makes us analyze. Winning propels us. And one of the cool things about being in sales is that you have a moment like that. You can say, we got to win. It's one of the fun things about sports, right? Where you have a moment at the end of the game where there's a winner, and hopefully you're on that team, but it's very finite. Like, we have a win. And there's a lot of careers or just a lot of things we do which kind of just grind on where there isn't that moment. So what's one of the great things about sales? Yay, we got the deal. People high five, you ring a gong, money goes into pockets, customers are happy. It's a very good thing. So the win is a big deal. People talk about the challenges of sales and it's a grind. So you have to have the reward. Yeah, the financial is one part, but honestly, the calling it a win, especially when you beat competitors and help a customer, that's really, I think, one of the big drivers.
I love hearing how different folks think about that question. And I love this concept of winning is this propulsion where losing gives us the ability to analyze, where we can learn and we can grow. But I haven't heard it defined like that, and I really like that one. Next one, what are your top 1 to 3 qualities in leaders that have helped you succeed the best that you've worked with or that you try and emulate as a leader now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the ability for them to understand your own approach and be empathetic to what you're trying to do and be helpful around that, as opposed to, something that's more analytical or short or, well, I don't know, just go get the deal done or whatever. Someone who's essentially steps in as a partner as a team member and partner and figuring things out together, because we don't have it all figured out. Nobody has it all figured out. That's a really important trait, because that is a constant challenge, and you need team help, not downward pressure. I think that's been the biggest thing. And then another would be just ideas and knowledge, right, to fill those gaps. What about this sales process? What about this negotiation? What about this messaging? And someone who's willing to roll up their sleeves and get into, and you can really learn from who's done it before, are both really, really important.
Those are great. Last 2 here for you. What's your favorite interview question to ask either a seller or sales leader that you're looking to hire?
Pitch me. Number 1, pitch me. So they've been selling something. So it doesn't matter. You don't have to know my product, but pitch whatever you've been selling for the last couple of years or whatever it is. I want to, and I'm going to toss questions out, and I want to see how they are in that environment. If they're in like an AE who's going to be closing enterprise deals or whatever, that's really important, because then suddenly all kinds of stuff comes out. How do they really come across? Do they really know the product? Do they really have a process? Do they really know how to handle questions? Are they comfortable? Do they come across, genuine? You learn a lot from that. And then you have to ask open-ended questions that find out things about how they are they self-starters? Do they have hustle? Are they tenacious? Those are some of the key qualities that you got to find out, and you can't just say, "So do you get up and hustle?" Like that's not going to work. So tell me a story about how you out hustled to win. Tell me about some deal wins, and then I get into that. How did you hustle to win that deal? There were 3 competitors in that deal. And then they actually have good stories about what they did. Or how did you get to that customer? You said that was an outbound win. How did you do it? Well, I had to do this, this, and this. Oh, good. They're tenacious and they have ideas, or not. So those are some of the things that I think are telling.
Those are great. And the last one is somebody that's been in businesses large and small, that's sitting in the CEO co-founder role today. Advice to sellers to help set themselves up to sit in that co-founder CEO role. What would you tell them to work on, or what would be your piece of advice for folks looking to grow their career in that direction?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You try to spend some time outside of just the role you're in, because again, it's very easy to get caught up in the pressure of that role and just do that all day long, which means maybe join meetings between AEs and VPs, or maybe join meetings around enablement, meetings around management, anything that you can to listen to how the rest of the org is talking to each other and thinking about the problems and addressing the problems. That's when you realize, oh, that's how that's how management thinks about us, or thinks about the process, or thinks about forecasting, or whatever that, there's lots of learnings. So I think that's a really important one. Get out of your spot and go listen to as many other things as you can manage the time. And then the other is you got to absorb and read, because you've got to be educated on processes and what's happening in the market, and be ready to take those learnings, get training. There's a lot to learn outside of just what your own experiences are. And then generally you have to move up through the ranks. So you got to go from wherever you are now to whatever the next role is, and the next role. Great thing about being in sales is often great sales leaders end up in the top roles, because if you're successful in sales, you probably know the business inside and out, because you know the product and the customers and the pressures and the features and the pricing, the trends. You're on the front lines of the whole thing. So it's a great place to be, but you just got to keep moving up those ranks, so you learn step by step. Instead of just thinking you're just going to hop. I think those are probably the best advice.
Those are really, really helpful points. And again, thinking about, if you're going to see great sales leaders moving up in the organizations. Well, Scott Milener, thank you so much. I know folks can find you at introsnap.com. We'll also link off to your LinkedIn. Any other places you like having folks follow you or connecting with folks?
Twitter is @Milener, so it's my last name. But yeah, LinkedIn and Twitter are probably the best ones. And obviously anyone who's listening would love to get your feedback. One cool thing about IntroSnap is you don't have to do a SaaS license. Anyone can go to introsnap.com and just start for free. There's buttons on there. You can start using it and send out donation offers to customers at the right times, and super easy to try it out, self-serve. So, and then glad to hear, feedback about how that goes. So.
Awesome. Well, until next time, let's go make it a great day.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jordan.
It's thanks to help from listeners like you, this podcast can continue to grow and help others. If you found anything helpful in today's episode, please take a second, share with a friend, and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast today. Thanks.